Polytechnicast. Podcast z VŠPJ, nejen o VŠPJ.
Welcome to Polytechnicast, the official podcast of the College of Polytechnics Jihlava. My name is Jakub Dostál and I will be your host today. Our today's guest is Professor Marek Kowalkiewicz, a leading expert on the digital economy and artificial intelligence, and the chair in the digital economy at Queensland University of Technology, and the author of the new book, Economy of Algorithms. Professor, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
What brought you here to the Czech Republic, and how are you enjoying it here?
I came to speak at a librarian conference. The conference is called the Libraries of Today. And I'm very excited to be here. I spent a couple of days in Prague, and now I'm here in Jihlava, really experiencing this beautiful part of Czech Republic. It's my first time in Czech Republic.
Wow, amazing. You have a huge industrial experience and now you are focused on academia. So one can wonder what brought you from industry to academia and how easy or smooth was that, let's say, transition?
Oh, that's a long story, but I'll try to keep it short. So, I spent part of my life in the academic world when I was working on my PhD, doing a lot of research. But at some stage I decided I wanted to really see what it feels like to work for an industry organization. So I joined a company called SAP and their R&D, Research and Development Department, right after graduating with my PhD. And I spent many years, more than a decade, working for that organization. At some stage, I realized it would be nice to be able to explore new technologies without being linked to a specific organization. So that was what brought me to academia. I had worked for other organizations such as Microsoft or Citibank all around the world. I saw it as the next step in my own development to be able to work with universities. And now I've been working in the university sector for just over a decade. So perhaps there's another stage coming very soon. A decade in industry, a decade in the academia. Maybe there's another decade coming. I don't know just yet.
I see. One can wonder that in today's times, let's say right now, it's understandable that people want to do digital economy or AI. But what was the reason why you got into this? Because it was like before all the hype started.
Okay, yes, that's right. It really started when I was a young child, a young boy who got his first computer. I got an Atari computer from my parents. It didn't really have any games. You had to write programs in a language called BASIC to make it work. And so I was doing it quite a lot as a kid, nothing very sophisticated, but just playing with it. And then when I was a high school student, I got into PCs and I bought a modem for myself, and it was before internet was widely available. I joined a network called FidoNet, and in this network I met so many people all around the world. I got really excited about the potential of what those networks could mean for us in the future. And then internet became very common. So when I was choosing my direction of study at a university, I was really keen to study something that was in the intersection of computer science and business. So the sort of the information systems, management information systems area. So that's what I chose, and I've been doing it since then.
That's fascinating. And I think it's also very inspiring for youngsters or kids or their parents if they see some kind of passion or enthusiasm in them to support it, to nurture it. And maybe someone will make a podcast with them one day.
That's right. I think I've been very lucky with my choices, but you're right. It's very important to clarify that I was not being opportunistic with my choices. I didn't decide to study business and computer science just because I thought I would earn a lot of money or anything like this. I was just fascinated in this space. It happens that it's popular right now and everyone, wants to talk about this topic. But regardless, if it was popular or not, I think I would be still enjoying it. And that's the most important thing.
That's amazing. And I think that's one of the things which many successful people will say, that the passion is very important. Be fascinated and be curious about things. Let's talk about your book, The Economy of Algorithms. Can you tell us what inspired you to write the book, and also maybe the title and the subtitle?
Yeah. The book is called The Economy of Algorithms. I have spent quite a few years trying to understand this new world in which it's not just corporations or people who can sell products, buy products, do work for others, hire others, fire others, not just corporations or people, but we also have this new entrant into the economy that is neither human nor corporate, and this new entrant is an algorithm. It could be an AI system, it could be a chatbot, it could be something far more simplistic than that. We have algorithms that hire us. Many Uber drivers are being managed by algorithms. There's no human who says, you're getting this job or that job. There is an algorithm that does that. There is no human that says, you're not working for us anymore. There will be an algorithm that will stop assigning jobs. And this is just an example. There's so many other examples. So I have been fascinated about this space and decided I want to share what I know with others in a language that's easy to understand, in a book that is full of stories. You did ask me about the subtitle. The subtitle is AI and the Rise of the Digital Minions, Artificial Intelligence and the Rise of the Digital Minions. Digital minions is something that I'm very passionate about. This is a name that I came up with when I heard about so many people talking about AI as our digital overlords. So those, omnipotent, powerful entities that are going to destroy humanity. My experience is different. I look at AI systems, I look at robots, and all that I see is incompetence. All that I see is mistakes all over the place. All that I see is systems that are very keen to help us, but if you look away for a bit, disasters happen. And then one day I was watching the movie Minions, and I saw those yellow creatures that are very keen to help. They're always there. They never sleep, it seems. You give them a task, they will do it, but then you look away for a while and disasters happen. So I thought, AI is a bit like digital minions. So that's the subtitle.
Oh, that's fascinating. And I think that watching the Minions movie will never be the same for anyone who's listening to us or who read your book. You already spoke about the hype which is around us. So from your perspective, what do you think is real and what is simply exaggerated about this AI hype?
Look, there's a lot of real stories where people use AI or maybe generative AI, because this is typically what we talk about when we say AI these days. So those chatbots or pieces of software that can create images or videos or even music. There's a lot of beautiful stories there where people use chatbots to help them understand social situations. Sometimes I get confused by maybe messages that I get from people. I use chatbots to explain to me, what that particular person might have meant. There are chatbots that help people with their foreign language skills. There are chatbots that help, summarize complex documents or translate them into, much easier ones. There are chatbots that help us in those tiny pieces of our life and make those tiny differences, but they're extremely, extremely helpful. And then there's the entire conversation about AI destroying the world, about AI, stealing jobs and so on. And a lot of this is really not based on facts, but it's more just trying to get some attention. So I see it also as my job to clarify those conversations. AI is not taking away jobs. AI is taking away tasks in our jobs, and yes, that might be problematic, but we really need to understand that. AI might be changing the entire system because perhaps some jobs will not be required or needed anymore. And we need to talk about it. But in many ways, this is not different from what we've seen in previous decades, in previous years, where some new technologies would change the way the world works and really change that system. So it's a fascinating space, really.
Now, some people are also worried that it will make the distance between rich and poor even wider. Either at the individual level or the country level.
Yeah.
And some slight detour to this year when the Pope Francis died, a new Pope were actually elected. He chose the name Leo, and the whole world were thinking why. Because in Middle Age, there were some people who were at least problematic leading this name. And when Pope Leo were explaining his name, he was talking about AI revolution, and that he was actually referring to his predecessor, Leo XIII, who were the Pope during the Industrial Revolutions. And he said that like what happened then, when the poor were endangered and the Pope tried to change the situation a little, this is what I want to do. So how do you see these parallels? And is this a real risk today about the distance between rich and poor really getting bigger and bigger?
It is a paradox, right? So there is a saying that the rising tide lifts all boats. It's not necessarily always the case. When a new technology is being introduced, there will be some that will benefit more from those new technologies than others. That's for sure. And we have to be mindful of that. And this is where the civic society is so important. This is why that ongoing conversation about it is so important. This is why we should perhaps be talking about universal access to artificial intelligence. If it is indeed the case that those chatbots can make those who can afford them more efficient, they can make them better at their work and so benefit more than those who cannot afford them. Why don't we talk about universal access to those? In fact, United Arab Emirates have struck that deal with one of the providers, OpenAI, on having this universal access. Obviously, United Arab Emirates are not exactly the poorest nation in the world, but there is a conversation to be had there. So this is a short-term conversation, right? That sort of rising tide impacting some people more than others, or impacting all of them, but in different ways. But there is a longer time conversation, and let me get back to the Industrial Revolution here. The Industrial Revolution has changed the world as a whole. The whole world is better. The whole world is more interconnected. The whole world has more opportunities for people than it used to have prior to the revolution. In the short term, there was massive disruption. People lost their jobs. There were massive tragedies, right, for those who weren't able to adapt to the Industrial Revolution. We need to be mindful that this could be a risk in this new revolution as well. And we need to be asking ourselves, what can we do to make sure that also in the short term, as many people benefit as it is possible?
Right, I see. And what do you think the role of the civil society organization should be? Because you mentioned them.
Yeah.
It could be like non-profits or civil activism or volunteering, or just that we care about the world around us. So what do you think the role of civil society should be in all this?
When we look at the creators, the providers, the vendors of artificial intelligence, their incentives are different than what we would be expecting as a society. And so a typical provider of an AI system will quite likely want their users to be using their system all the time, coming back to those systems, effectively get addicted to those systems, right? This is natural for a business. An organization like that wants to thrive, wants to grow, wants to generate more revenue, more profit, and so on. That's a natural behavior. Is this a behavior that we want as a society? Not necessarily so, right? So this is where those civil society organizations should be stepping in and saying, look, we understand that this is your goal, this is your incentive, but we as a society are not okay with that. You should not be making your users more and more addicted to those systems. You should be stopping this, this addiction whenever it's spotted. And this is just an example. Nothing new in our society, by the way, right? You cannot buy cigarettes if you're, a 12-year-old. You cannot buy alcohol if you're a 12-year-old, because they can get you addicted, right? So those controls are being introduced in many areas of the economy already. I think it's time to start asking ourselves those questions as well. I am definitely not saying that it should be happening, that we should be introducing those bans, but I'm also definitely saying that we should be having this conversation and that we should be asking whether this is the right approach or not.
That's a good point. If we talk about organizations, either non-profits or firms or governments, how is AI already changing the operation? And how do you think it will change?
So right now, a lot of organizations, including government, are focused on the efficiency gains of artificial intelligence. So what this basically means is everyone's asking themselves now, I'm doing this task and it takes me, 10 hours to do that task. Could I introduce AI to do it in 30 minutes instead of 10 hours? That's the efficiency gain. And there's a lot of conversation around it. There's a lot of, technologies that are being introduced in this space. But I don't think this is sustainable. The biggest issue with generative AI technologies is that while they create this impression of making things faster, there is a trade-off there, specifically with generative artificial intelligence technology, and that's a trade-off of the risk of mistakes, the risk of the results being not up to standard. We didn't used to have it in the former types of computing systems, the so-called deterministic systems, right? So systems where you always know what the output is. We could definitely talk about that sort of shortening of time. Gen AI systems are so-called stochastic or probabilistic systems, which means you can never tell what the output is going exactly to be. And so there's always a need to double check those outputs. So here's my point, and and I'll try to keep it short. The focus on efficiency gains is mistaken. We need to understand that while those technologies take a bit less time to produce outputs, the right approach is to then spend all of the saved time on working with those outputs and refining them. What's going to happen then is within the same unit of time, within the same amount of time, we're going to produce something that is potentially of much higher quality, because we spend less time on producing the early versions of that, but then for the rest of the time, we can refine it, we can improve it. So that allows us to achieve much higher quality of outputs with those technologies. So to summarize, in short term, we'll see efficiency gains. In the longer term, we'll see quality gains, and a lot of organizations are already starting to notice that.
Perfect. Let's talk about the future a little bit. I know that one would probably need a crystal ball to answer my next question, but how do you personally believe the AI will change our world in, let's say, 10 or 5 or 10 years? What do you personally believe is going to happen?
So I try to avoid talking about future because I'm so bad at predicting the future. But what I know is that 10 years from now, when we look back at our lives today, so 2025, when in 2035 we look at 2025, we will be surprised and amused at how basic our AI tools were. In the same way, we look at maybe some of our computers from 1980s or 1990s and say, oh, so you were actually typing all of the commands on your keyboard, you didn't have a mouse, and so on. How ridiculous was that? In the same way, we'll be looking at ChatGPT and saying, oh, you actually chatted with the bot, using a keyboard. This might be, one thing that we'll be doing. Now, more broadly speaking, I think that those new technologies will saturate our life. They will impact the way we interact with other people. I hope for the better, but there is a risk that they'll also, put us apart from other people or reduce that connectivity. So they'll have a lot of impact on our relationships with other people. They will change the way we work, but importantly, there will be also completely new types of jobs, completely new types of services, completely new types of businesses that we hadn't seen before. Just like before mobile phones, there were no businesses that were producing ringtones or mobile phone covers or, fixing those devices. We'll have an entire industry that will be around generative AI that's only just emerging.
Let's come back to, let's say, more tangible question, even though it's still pointing to the future. What skills do you believe that today's students, because we are in the academic soil, should today's students and young professionals develop to actually succeed in AI-driven economy?
So this might sound a bit boring because I think those skills are universal here. But curiosity and an ability to learn and relearn is very important. The challenge that we have with artificial intelligence at the moment is that a lot of people are afraid of it. But every time I speak to people who are afraid of AI, turns out they don't use AI. So they're afraid of a ghost. They're afraid of something that they've never seen before. They've only perceived a silhouette of that, but they never touched it. They never interacted with it. That curiosity, when I say curiosity, I mean that ability to, or that keenness to use those systems, to play with them, to, rather than be scared about AI, to go to chatgpt.com and just see what pops up and, try it. Willingness to learn and relearn is also going to be very important because we are entering a world which we don't fully understand yet. We are given this tool of generative AI that comes with no manual. No one has a manual to generative AI. We don't know what are good ways of interacting with it. What are some less productive ways? We just don't know it. So we need to learn that. That's the ability to learn. But those systems also evolve as we go. There are continuously new systems emerging and so on. So whatever we've learned about how to use Gen AI today will likely be useless next week or maybe next year. So we need to relearn and forget all those tricks and so on. And this will be ongoing. So curiosity and ability to learn and relearn, really that's what students should be focusing on. Nothing new, really.
Yeah, that's amazing. If we stay in, let's say, in academia and think about also in academics, I think many of them are also afraid of the ghost, of using it, because some time ago I had a conversation with my colleague, and he said everyone is using it, and then I was part of some of the research team, and then I realized it's not always the case. So what advice would you give either to students or academics to use it in, let's say, responsible way in AI? Either they are starting or they are more advanced.
Every academic that I speak to, I tell them just one thing. I say, think about Gen AI systems as that friend of yours who's extremely smart, who has read a lot of books, who knows everything that they can know, but also occasionally takes recreational drugs, and you never know when. And that's it, full stop. The moment you think about Gen AI like this, that it could be extremely helpful, but also randomly completely unhelpful, that will set your mindset in a way where you will be using those systems to help you, but you will also be validating, verifying everything, double-checking, and you will stay engaged cognitively. Just like with that friend of yours, right? He might be very smart, but he or she might be high when they are giving you that life advice. So before you follow that life advice, think about it for yourself. Be the one who has the agency. Every researcher, I recommend they use Gen AI systems for maybe initial literature searches, but they need to be aware that hallucinations will happen and that perhaps not every piece of literature will pop up in that search. So we still need to go back to those traditional ways of doing our literature review, but at the same time, we could be using those technologies to give us some inspiration.
That's actually one of my most favorite illustrations you're actually using. I think I saw it in your LinkedIn account about the friend who is really smart, but also do some drugs.
I keep saying that like you, so you must have seen me doing it, yes.
The other illustration you used, which I really loved, was about changing the Pareto rule. Yeah, that in past, we were talking and listening about 80% of the time we spent on the first work and the 20% on polishing. And you said that now it will be vice versa. Can you elaborate it a little bit?
So it used to be very expensive, and by expensive I mean took a lot of time, took a lot of effort. It used to be very expensive to create content. It's different right now. Economists would say that the marginal cost of content creation is close to zero, which basically means that it's extremely cheap to create content these days. This is something new that we didn't used to have that. Content creation used to be always very expensive. We know it from other areas. The internet has introduced the marginal cost of producing digital products or services as zero, right? So Spotify, whether they have 1 million users or 1 billion users, that sort of increase by 1,000-fold is not really a massive cost for them, right? That's the marginal cost being zero. Now back to Gen AI and marginal cost of content creation being zero. This means that we can create a lot of content very, very cheaply, but that content will likely have all sorts of tiny issues that need to be ironed out, that need to be removed, that need to be fixed. In the past, when humans were creating content, those humans would probably not create the type of mistakes that Gen AI systems create. So yes, the Pareto rule says we would spend 80% creating the content and then 20% of time reviewing, refining that content. Think about, a student doing some work and then a professor reviewing that work. An employee spending 80% of the time writing a report, the manager spending 20% reviewing that report. With Gen AI, we're flipping that. Or maybe not just yet. Initially, everyone just spends less time on creating the content and just as much time as before on reviewing, refining the content. So from 80-20, we're down to 20-20, all right? And then we realize it's actually not good. It's not good enough because the 20% that we sort of left for checking, that's not enough for really engaging with Gen AI content, as many of us who play with those tools or use those tools will know. So what happens is the Pareto flip from 80-20 to 20-80. We spend 20% of time creating the content, 80% correcting, reviewing, curating it. Creation versus curation. Now one might think, okay, so what's the point here if we're still spending the same amount of time here? We're just flipping the roles. Well, the point is that, and I was alluding to it before, you will be spending the same amount of time, but the quality will be massively improved, because in the remaining 80%, you're engaging in this wonderful back and forth with Gen AI, where you prompt it and say you need to improve that, you got an improvement, and then you sort of step by step, like on a ladder, you go up with the quality. So that Pareto flip is not just about the change of roles, but also about the elevation of quality.
That's actually my third most favorite illustration you used, because you said, is it taking less time writing the article this way? Probably not. But is it better? You bet. So that's probably something it should be like a takeaway point.
Yes.
The research itself, especially, or I can tell about the social sciences, is changing. Yeah, we had like the art of writing the articles.
Yes.
And not always people would just do research and think about the papers, but we do research, and when the research is ready, I write the article. Sometimes it was like flat. So how do you think the AI is changing this creative process of research? Are we going to do research and then use Gen AI or all the other AIs to actually help us to write articles here and back?
We're only trying to understand it. The challenge with scientific research is that we are relying on the scientific method. We are relying on very rigorous ways of doing research. Now, Gen AI systems are far from rigorous in a lot of things that they do, and so this is a bit of a conflict right now between this sort of very rigorous, very structured approach following the scientific method, and this more random, more stochastic way of working with Gen AI systems. What I'm trying to say through that is that we still need to find the right place for Gen AI in the research process. My experience so far shows that Gen AI systems are fantastic for this sort of accelerated understanding of the body of knowledge, but it's only the first step. The second step is mandatory, where then we engage just like in the past with that body of knowledge. So it gives us like that initial lay of the land before we engage with it. Gen AI systems are already used in spell checking systems like Grammarly and so on. This is a fairly safe one where, the system will say, look, you made a grammatical mistake here. Maybe don't use passive, use active language for this statement. This sentence is a bit confusing. That's fantastic for that sort of quality of writing. Let's remember that one of the goals of scientists is to communicate knowledge, and so those systems can help us communicate knowledge better. What I missed from this entire conversation so far is the actual process of coming up with new ideas, right? I do believe that it is important for humans to be in charge of that process, and I still have this romantic notion of humans being the innovators. But I also see massive role of Gen AI systems in reducing our own biases. So how everyone talks about AI systems being biased? I see it differently. I see us humans as being biased. If I'm a researcher focusing on a particular area, I might not have that mental flexibility to consider, other perspectives. This is where I can invite those Gen AI systems to challenge my thinking. And I think this sort of sparring partner in research, there is some massive potential in there.
Thank you for that. I think that you already said it, that often when people talk about AI, they mean generative AI. But for me, like the most, let's say, fruitful way of using in my research is asking questions like, is it clear what I have written? Is it understandable? Is it coherent?
Yes.
Am I repeating the same information? And I think this is rarely, in my opinion, in the public debate. And my question is, like, if you agree with this, and if yes, what is the reason and how could it be changed? That is like narrowing the debate on generative AI.
So I agree. A job of a researcher, a job of a scientist is not only to come up with new ideas, to contribute to the body of knowledge, but also to engage with the society. And an average scientist is probably the worst person that we could have to communicate their science to general public. An average scientist simply doesn't have the vocabulary, doesn't have the language to speak about their ideas in a very, very simplistic way. They might have all sorts of reasons why they don't want to simplify what they talk about. And so from this perspective, I think those tools are fantastic. As you know, I try to engage with general public in various ways. I write newsletters, I write short messages on social media platforms, I record tiny podcasts, I give keynotes, and so on and so on. One common thing across all of those things that I mentioned is that I never use the type of academic language in them that I would be using in academic papers. It took me years and years to learn to speak normal language when I talk about my research. And I think Gen AI is a technology that will allow or help scientists translate their work into everyday language, which will benefit everyone, both an average person on the street who will now have access to this new knowledge, but also the researchers, because perhaps their work will be much more appreciated by the taxpayers.
There are voices saying that higher education actually has lost its relevance. I don't know if you heard them. I heard some of them, and that it offers outdated knowledge and cannot keep pace with the world. Do you think that universities and higher education institutions in general still matters in the AI age? And if so, what should their role be?
Yeah, so there's no easy answer to this. Look, there are lazy professors who do not want to update their materials, who are not able to keep up with the world that is changing. They should be fired. They are dragging the entire industry down, all right? And then there are fantastic educators, fantastic researchers who see their role as those who help people make sense of what's happening in the world. They should be promoted. They should be in charge of the education sector of the future. I think the role of this stale, lazy, non-refreshing academia is indeed less and less important. But the moment we realize that universities could be the places that help people understand how to navigate this future world, that can equip them with skills to navigate this future world, I think the future is bright. It's definitely not the case that you can just go to ChatGPT and get all your knowledge from there. You still need those higher level skills that universities learn. Universities are not about teaching you formulas that you have to memorize. Universities are about teaching you how to think. and that important skill, I think we still can be pretty confident that we will be delivering.
If you can share one last message to our viewers, because we are almost at the end, about an AI, one message which you would like them to bring from our conversation, what would it be?
I believe it's extremely important to always be or try to be as educated about AI as it's possible. Do not just listen to people who tell you that AI is bad or AI is good. Do not just listen to me or just listen to this podcast. You have to be proactive. Get out there, play with those technologies. Make sure you develop your own understanding, your own instincts about those technologies. Make mistakes. Try to do things. See how badly those systems sometimes deliver results. Make great things, try those systems and see where they're really good. And through this very active engagement with those systems, build your own understanding of artificial intelligence. Do not rely on others telling you what it is, how it will change your life. Do not listen to me.
Professor, thank you for coming to Polytechnicast. We hope that our viewers enjoyed the thoughts and insight. And until next time, this was Polytechnicast. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.